It's not even at a 10,000 year high. So where's the cause and effect? If there is a cause and effect, it's pretty weak. Using their own data. Okay, here's the same thing. This is just another chart. I added a little thing there. No SUVs back then, but the CO2 got up there. Note how I use this one just because of the dramatic nature on which they present these things. They stop the chart and then the guy hand draws in 370 parts per million to show you that this thing is way off the charts. This is once again 400,000 years. Okay? And this basically, once again, here's the Vlasov ice core. This one doesn't bother to mention that this part here is Mauna Loa. They just kind of like forget that. Here, once again, though, you can see the peaks. The temperature recently is way off the previous peaks. So we aren't even near a peak of a cycle, and yet CO2 is off the charts. Right? Cause and effect. Okay, once again, everyone knows cause and effect. The cause has to occur first, right? Right? I get punched, then I get a bloody nose. Right?
Keep it up.
I drink a fifth of vodka, then I get drunk. Right? It would make no sense if I am drunk today and drink a fifth of vodka 800 years in the future, right? That doesn't make any sense at all. Well, that's what happens. Right? What I did was I zoomed in on this one just to show you the cause and effect. I took this slice, which is one of the peaks, to show you what happens. CO2 remains very high, flat. Temperature, however, plummets, falls through the floor. Let's go back on that, because that's important. Okay? Temperature is right, or CO2 is right here. CO2 stays the same, and yet temperature falls through the floor. Right? Now, if CO2 was causing temperature to increase, how could you have high levels of CO2 and temperature fall through the floor? Doesn't make sense. What does temperature fall rapidly during the period of high CO2 levels? It just simply doesn't make sense. Okay? And the reason for it is, well, here's another one, cause and effect. Right? Once again, here is another chart shown differently. CO2, okay, temperature. But if you look at the chart, you'll see that this level of temperature in 1890 is above where it was in about 1975. So you have essentially flat temperatures over that time period, and yet CO2 goes from 290 up to about 330. So you have continual increase in CO2, but essentially stable to flat temperatures. Okay? Then recently, temperatures have begun to pick up.
But is that part on the right, the Mauna Loa again?
Yeah, in that case, it's Mauna Loa. Okay? But here's what I find most fascinating, is in any kind of normal science, if you had your cause and effect, your independent, dependent variable reversed, they'd say, that's a joke, throw it out, right? If I did a study on aspirin causing headaches, and I waited for the patient headache to resolve, and then I gave them the aspirin, okay, I'd be able to prove my aspirin works pretty well if I model it that way. But the aspirin, there's no way for the aspirin to cure the headache if it's taken after the headache cures itself, right? The CO2 data itself, why does the lag of CO2 behind temperature and ice cores tell us about global warming? Or what does it? Okay? So it's well known in the scientific community that CO2 doesn't lead temperature. Temperature leads CO2 by 800 or 600 to 1,000 years. So what that means is, temperatures increase today, then 1,000 years later, CO2 increases. There's no way for CO2 to increase 1,000 years in the future to cause temperature to increase today, right? That's like, once again, it's like me getting drunk today and drinking 1,000 years from now. Doesn't make any sense. They've got their independent, dependent variables worked out. Let me see. This, by the way, comes from real climate science from climate scientists. So they're well aware of this. This is from their own work.
So is that why when you have a bottle of champagne and it's cold, it doesn't fizz as much as it's warm?
We'll get to that in a minute. That's another part coming up. But the bottom line is that cause and effect is simply are backwards. Okay? Basic Science 101. Oh, and the reason I burned these CDs, because I thought this would be a great example for a science project, or for kids to see. because this is basically a critical analysis and an understanding scientific studies. Like you always had those classes that explain the independent variable and cause and effect, and you never knew what the heck's going on. This is a great way to really have people understand what's going on. They can see, oh, CO2 increases, temperature increases, or temperature increases, and CO2 increases. Okay? And so, if you take that CD, if you know any kids, have them take it into their science fair project, they can always contact me, and I'd love to come in and give a talk. Basic Science 101, the independent variable causes the dependent variable to change. Basic Science 101, the independent variable causative agent must lead the dependent variable, i.e., I exercise, then I lose weight. Losing weight does not cause me to exercise. Temperature leads CO2 by 600 to 1,000 years. And that makes sense. Okay? An increase in CO2 1,000 years in the future cannot cause an increase in temperature today unless we were living in the twilight zone. Unless you have a time machine or something, but it just doesn't make sense. And the laws of science and common sense do not cease to exist in the global warming departments of our universities. Okay? Basic scientific practices have to be followed whether you're a global warming scientist or not. You can't have your cause and effect reversed.
But then, Bob, what does cause a temperature increase?
The sun.
Solar flares.
Solar flares. No, we'll get to that, Hildegard. We got it coming up. We got all the bases covered.
Well, the one that are global are mini ice age from like the 14th century to about the 18th century, Bob.
Oh yeah, we'll get that.
You can use your
We got all. Okay, temperatures are at historic highs. Chart shows that we are far below the peaks of previous cycles. Their own chart show that, not mine. We are below the peak of just 10,000 years ago. Once again, we're actually cooling from 10,000 years ago. Medieval period was warmer than today. Okay?
Didn't have that CD.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. How did the CO2 get so high back then with no SUVs or coal burning power plants? And we were just getting back to the pre-little ice age temperatures. Right? This is what, has anyone read the book, The State of Fear? Mm-hmm. Okay, well I got this one from State of Fear because he talks about, a lot of the problem is these continual data samples, right? You saw it with the core samples and then the Mauna Loa, okay? Global warming is kind of a new science, so they have to come up with these proxies stuff. Well, the longest direct measurement of temperature is the Albany, New York weather station. That goes back to the early 1800s. Well, this is actually from their data, and once again, click on it, it'll take you right there, and you'll see back the average temperature in 1822, 49.2. The average temperature in 2005, 49.2. So if you keep the same measurement technique, there's no global warming, at least according to Albany, New York. And they keep talking about these thinning ice caps. At least according to science, the ice caps are thickening, not thinning. Alright? So if you use consistent data samples, you start to see that their theory begins to break down. Alright, now another thing that you do in science is anytime you do an experiment, you might do it 2 or 3 different ways to confirm it, right? If you have 2 or 3 different ways to skin a cat, you do 2 or 3, and if 2 of them kind of confirm each other and one of them is an outlier, what would you normally think you'd do?
Drop down.
You drop the outlier, right? You got 2 confirming systems and one that says it's way out of whack. You throw the one that's way out of whack, right? That's not what they do. Okay? There's 3 ways to measure temperature. Direct temperature measures, surface, satellite, and balloon. Satellite and balloon temperature do not show warming over the last 20, 30 years. Okay? Only the ground temperature measurements show global warming, and there's problems with it because a lot of times they have the thermometer on a tar roof next to a blacktop driveway. So there's big problems with surface temperatures. The satellite temperatures, however, and the balloon temperatures do not show global warming. More importantly, I want to show you something. Okay, this is a report from the IPCC, the International Panel of Climate Change. This is the report that they say. And it says here that the lowest 8 kilometers of the atmosphere has changed by 0.05 degrees. So the IPCC